This should all be sanded off. What else did those painters do?
Investigators visit the hangar where the plane spent 3 weeks being serviced. They learn the work included painting the plane, replacing XL Airways colors with those of the Air New Zealand fleet.
This led to investigate the painting operations because the angle of attack sensors needs some specific protections.
The procedure directs painters to cover the sensors first so they don't get clogged with paint.
When airplanes are painted, it's the same with your car. Very special protections have to be made for certain items. With your car, you cover the headlights because you don't want paint over the headlights. That's a very simple analogy, but to a much more complex way, the same thing is true with airplanes.
Investigators consider the possibility that the sensors malfunctioned because of a sloppy coat of paint.
At this point, the investigation focused on finding out if there was any possibility that paint might have adhered there and created a blockage that prevented the rotation of the vane.
They re-examined the angle of attack sensor data from the flight recorder. If paint was jamming the sensors, it would have caused problems throughout the entire flight.
Climbing flight level 180.
But the data clearly shows the sensors didn't fail until 22 minutes after takeoff.
Do you need anything from us while we climb?
The recorders showed that the sensor was working at the beginning of the flight.
We need to get a look at those sensors.
Investigators conclude paint wasn't the problem. There must be another explanation for the failure. They noticed something else in the maintenance records. The plane needed extra cleaning after the paint job was done.
Some dust was covering the top of the aircraft. The maintenance people had to remove this dust.
Tell me exactly how you cleanse this plane.
Normally, maintenance workers use a clean cloth to remove any dust. But this time, they rinse the plane with a hose.
The painting operations had taken a little bit of a delay. To rinse the aircraft was faster than to use clean clothes to remove the dust.
Spraying uncovered sensors with a high-pressure hose might explain how water got so deep inside. But the investigators need proof. They mount a sensor in a test rig and recreate the cleaning procedure.
Okay, hit it!
We knew the plane had been rinsed with a fire hose plugged into the water main, so we got hold of the details regarding water pressure and flow.
Okay, got it! Okay, let's get it to the lab.
Next, they place the sensor in a freezer and duplicate the cold air temperatures found at 32,000 feet.
It was a massive ingestion of water that solidified into ice.
I
think we definitely got some ice in there. Won't budge.
The lab results seem to confirm the investigators' hunch. Ice inside the sensors could have frozen them in place. But there's one final test they need to do to be absolutely sure.
We performed a test flight to check what could be the temperature inside the angle of attack sensors. That was the first time such a test was conducted because nobody knew what could be the temperature inside an angle of attack sensor.
They flood the sensors of an A320 with water and recreate Flight 888. At low altitudes, the sensors work perfectly.
So far, so good.
When the plane reaches 32,000 feet, the temperature inside the sensor drops below freezing.
There they go. The sensors aren't moving.
The water inside freezes and the sensors stop working.
Okay, you can bring them home.
The result explains why the flight computer didn't prevent the plane from stalling during the low speed test.
Get your power at idle. Adjust pitch. Flaps full.
With the sensors frozen, the computer can't calculate the plane's true angle of attack.
The flight control computers can only respond to data and inputs that they get. In this case, the two angle of attack inputs were simultaneously bad, and the flight control computer has no way to know that.
It's pitching up all the time. It's pitching up.
Because the angle of attack vanes couldn't move, they could not then activate the low-speed protections that the crew is expecting.
The plane's automated safety systems are effectively crippled. But there's another mystery.
Stick forward.
Just before the crash, the captain tries to fly out of trouble.
The last level of protection, if you will, is the crew.
Captain Keppel increases power while pushing his side stick forward to bring the nose down. It's a textbook maneuver to prevent the plane from stalling. But it doesn't work. The plane continues to pitch up until it loses lift and falls from the sky.
They tried to apply the nose down input on the side stick, but their efforts were not sufficient.
Investigators need to know why. A computer simulation helps investigators analyze Flight 888's final flight check, the low speed test.
Okay, get your power at idle. Adjust pitch. Flaps full.
Okay, here we go.
Captain Keppel deliberately slows his plane down for the test, but the computer lets the speed drop too far, below the minimum needed to keep the plane in flight.
They let their airspeed drop to 100 knots.
We noticed just how dramatically their airspeed was falling.
Pose it.
Investigators notice a warning on the cockpit flight display moments before the crash.
What is that?
They learned that the warning is supposed to alert the pilots the flight computer is no longer helping to fly the plane. It has switched to full manual mode.
You get a message in red that appears in the middle of your primary flight display telling you to use the manual elevator trim. The message in English is, use man pitch trim.
The warning comes on when the plane's computer gets conflicting information. The frozen sensors are telling the computer the plane is flying level, while other onboard sensors are relaying its extreme nose-up attitude.
The airplane by design, when it starts getting data that it cannot figure out what to do with, reverted and said, all right, something is wrong, we don't know what, this is up to the pilots to sort out.
The plane gave the pilot control right here.
It seems the crew of Flight 888 either didn't see or didn't understand the warning being sent by the computer.
Stick forward.
The pilot uses his side stick to try to lower the nose. In manual mode, that's just not enough. The crew also needs to adjust the trim wheel for a more dramatic change of pitch.
The auto trim system is disabled, and the pilots are required to do that manually.
But they never do.
Now the pilots find themselves in a very, very difficult situation. The airplane's not accelerating, the nose is coming up, it's very hard to get it to come down, and they're at low altitude.
The two crew members tried everything to recover and to check the control of the aircraft, but they did not fully understand the situation.
Investigators check the pilot's qualifications. Perhaps poor training accounts for their failure to respond properly to cockpit warnings.
The captain, who was the pilot flying, was the head of the operations divisions in the airline. The co-pilot was also very experienced as a co-pilot, and the captain that was sitting on the observer seat was also a very experienced captain.
Everything looks fine.
Their records are spotless.
And so the team was very experienced.